Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our discussion in cooperation with the Netherlands Institute of International Relations, Clingendael. Our topic is the EU's approach to Black Sea security, from strategy to action. My name is Iana Maisuradze. I'm the policy analyst here at the European Policy Center's Europe in the World program. And thank you again to all of you for joining us today here in the room and also online. We will examine how the EU can strengthen security, stability and cooperation in the Black Sea region, and also try to outline the steps needed to translate this strategy into action. The Black Sea region has become a central security concern for Europe. Russia's full-scale war against Ukraine, accelerating militarization, and rising hybrid threats have pushed the region to the top of the EU strategic agenda, leading to the adoption of the new or relatively new EU strategic approach to the Black Sea. As a key corridor for energy, trade, and military mobility, stability in the Black Sea is vital for European security. Turning this strategy into action requires stronger EU engagement on defense, maritime security, and resilience against hybrid threats, alongside deeper regional cooperation. The region's future is closely tied to the outcome of Russia's war against Ukraine, but it also tests the EU's ability to move beyond a reactive posture and develop a coherent long-term strategy for sustained engagement. We have an excellent panel today to discuss these issues, and let me quickly introduce them to you. Julia Soldatiuk-Westerveld, Senior Research Fellow at the Clingendael Institute's EU and Global Affairs Unit. Ben Bekkering, retired Vice Admiral, Senior Research Associate at the Clingendael Institute for International Relations, and former Deputy Head of the Royal Netherlands Navy, and also former permanent military representative of the Netherlands to NATO and the EU. Hennadiy Maksak, to my right, Executive Director of Foreign Policy Council, Ukrainian Prism, and last but not least, Ambassador Tacan İldem, NATO former Assistant Secretary General and former permanent representative of Turkey to NATO and the OSCE, Chairman of the Center for Economics and Foreign Policy Studies, EDAM. Welcome and thank you for joining us today. Before I pass the floor to our first speakers, let me give some housekeeping rules. Our session today lasts for 60 minutes, so 1 hour, and I know some colleagues have a train to catch, so we will keep an eye on the time. I will start with a few opening questions to the speakers, and then we will engage into a conversation. Afterwards, I will open the digital floor as well as our floor here for questions from you. And if you are asking a question in the chat, please raise your hand, and we will try to bring your questions. And please do try to keep your questions or comments short, so I can also read them by glance. So these are the housekeeping rules, and without further ado, let me turn to our panelists, and let me start with you, Julia. Maybe you could frame the discussion for us, why Black Sea matters for Europe and also for Ukraine, and what is the role of the Black Sea as the white knight, so to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, good afternoon, everyone. So just to start with a few words on the strategic relevance of the Black Sea. It is located on a crossroads between Middle East, between Europe, Caucasus, Asia, Middle East, and other regions. So it has been strategic for a very long time. Also having a crossing of different pipelines of energy transport and a commercial navigation kind of a central point in the region. But it has been considered by the European Union, at least, as a periphery in terms of policy planning. It has been part of DG Analyst its previous, and this changed since 2022, the Russian war in Ukraine, but also in 2023, the Israel-Gaza war, which disrupted, both of these events disrupted substantially the northern route from East Asia to Europe, trade route, but also the maritime route from Suez Canal. And that has kind of did basically two things. Because of these disruptions, the urgency came to reassess and look at the alternatives. The middle corridor and global gateway also gained urgency. But at the same time, the security threats and the changed perception of the Russia as viewed as an urgent threat to the region, to the Black Sea region, has prompted European Union to assume a security actor role, which is new. And especially with efforts of EU member states such as Romania and Bulgaria, who have been concerned and are concerned about the security threats coming from Russia. Very much at this time, they have been pushing for a greater EU and NATO involvement in the region, which has translated last year on May 28 in adoption of an EU strategic approach towards the Black Sea security, which is now in its phase of thinking and developing the implementation lines for it for coming years. So this EU strategic approach is not the first initiative that has been there on the European level when it comes to Black Sea. Earlier, a number of years earlier, I think it was in 2008, a Black Sea Synergy initiative was launched as well. It was focused very much on economic, financial cooperation, but the geopolitical context was very different, as was recently pointed out. But that at that time, when the synergy was launched, Russia was still considered as a partner, at least a actor to negotiate with. Georgia was considered as a really priority for the region because of its connection to the Caspian Sea, and Azerbaijan for energy, and being strategically located at the middle corridor. So the priorities were very different. Romania and Bulgaria back then were just the new member states that were pushing, or at least trying to bring their perspective to the table in Brussels as well. And this has changed very much. So the challenges that we see in the region have changed enormously. Now it's very much about the security, about the protection of undersea infrastructure, about monitoring and information situation, maritime situational awareness of what is happening in the sea, and also ability to attribute quickly incidents and that are happening. There's also very much about the hybrid threats, how to address them, not only how to address them and how to react on adversive actions, but also develop a preemptive response across the escalation ladder of the hybrid threats, starting from disinformation and malign influence on election campaigns, to cyber attacks, electronic jamming, which is in abundance now. We see it in the Black Sea region and others as well, and expanding to actions like military drills, for example, that Russia also frequently employs in the exclusive economic waters of Romania and Bulgaria, among others. So how to respond, not only respond, but how to ensure that deterrence is sufficiently strong, that these actions, to discourage these actions. Basically, this is one of the priorities. And now there is this military balance in the region. If you look at individual littoral states and their military capabilities, there is a disbalance in that. So the priority is very much also not only on the maritime aspect, but also on the land, strengthening infrastructure that has a dual use capacity, the military mobility, which is now more and more mentioned not only within the EU broad context, but specifically on the region of the eastern flank of NATO, how to ensure better infrastructure connectivity for both commercial goals and potentially military defense goals. Another aspect that I'd like to mention, perhaps the need for inclusive approach. So we are now discussing, for example, the one of the flagships of the flagship initiative of the EU strategic approach to the Black Sea is the EU Maritime Security Hub, which is its goal is to there are different goals, but to monitor and to include information sharing, to formulate better maritime situational picture, to exchange this information with the partners. So there is very important an inclusive approach. Not only the European Union, but the strategic partners such as Turkey, such as Ukraine in the Black Sea need to be included in this approach. It needs to be coordinated with all actors in the region, or at least those actors that are aligned in terms of strategic priorities. And the last and not least, the very important point on the Black Sea security in general, that it is very much depends how the security landscape will look like on the outcome of the Russian war in Ukraine. And while it is still unclear when it will, how it will evolve and when it will be resolved, this fact of uncertainty shouldn't paralyze European policies on the region. So there is a sense of urgency that is shared by multiple EU member states, and not only the littoral states in the Black Sea, that we need to move from strategic frameworks, from planning and long-term kind of perspective, institutional building, to a quick actions, quick response to urgent threats that are there. I will stop here and we'll give the floor to the next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia, for laying out the ground and framework for our discussion, and also mentioning the strategic importance and some of the ways forward for the existing approach. Let me turn to Ben now. Maybe you could reflect on the strategic maritime value of the Black Sea, including how stability requires a strong mix of deterrence, resilience, coordination in light of the ongoing war. Thank you.
Yeah, the title was "Why Does the Black Sea Matter?" and it won't come as a surprise to you that as a naval officer, everything with water is important. So it always matters, and certainly in that respect, the Black Sea is not so much different from other enclosed seas like the North Sea, which is close to my home, but also the Baltic Sea, etc. But there are a couple of things that make the Black Sea stand out. I will touch on them very briefly, and then touch on what I would feel are the priorities for bolstering security. I'll keep it short, so to allow you many questions later on. But to me, as a security practitioner, the Black Sea is slightly different than other seas because of the geopolitical rivalry and in fact blunt territorial aggression that is already taking place in the Black Sea, with one state blatantly ignoring the international rules-based order already. It is an intersection, as Julia already said, of many flows. As I say, flow security is making sure the shipping lanes run, but also nowadays the energy and data cables and pipelines that are there, but also crime that is using the same routes, transport routes at sea, as also the normal companies are doing. It is a very condensed area with a couple of littoral states. It's semi-closed for geographical reasons, but also because of conventions. And it's a distinct maritime area because it is such a central role in those flows that are going there. But also those flows, that sea provides opportunities for nations to project power. So all of this makes the Black Sea a very security-biased region, with a lot of connectors between the various actors and actions, etc. And when there's lots of connectors, there's also many risks. And certainly those risks can be exploited below the threshold of armed conflict. Now, and I'll come to that later. So how to bolster security? I think there are many good initiatives already, and Julia mentioned a few, so the hub is very important. but what I would like to add is, so where does all those initiatives have to focus on? And I think I've never been a person that spends 2 years on deciding how a structure and an organization should look like, define one in 2 weeks and get working, but then have the flexibility to adapt as the situation dictates. And I hope that that same is being given to all those coordination efforts in the Black Sea, including the hub. So what do they then have to concentrate on? I think first is awareness and understanding. Although we all think that we know how things operate in the Black Sea, it's only when you're there, when you start looking at it, when you start analyzing stuff, is that it becomes really clear to you what is happening. And then still, you probably only know 50, 60, 70% of it. So what I would say is any coordination mechanism like the hub, be holistic, have an integrated look at what is happening, assume that everything is connected. And I wish all the people that work there lots and lots of curiosity, because it will always be different than what you think. The second thing is, we always say deterrence, but aren't we already in the phase of defense? In the Russian doctrine, military doctrine, there's no distinction between peace, crisis, and conflict. So for them, there's no threshold. So every action they take is part of an offensive action, and therefore aren't we really in the defensive situation already? And that means that we have to focus on resilience. But resilience is everything about prevention, absorption, if something does happen, and reconstitution, to go back to the old situation or even a better new situation. The problem there is that obviously that those capabilities, so prevent, absorb, and reconstitute, cannot be done with a surge, certainly not a surge of sea-based assets coming into the Black Sea. You must do with what you have in theater. And you can only think of perhaps looking more at public-private solutions and perhaps shore-based solutions that will create maritime security. Notwithstanding the great effort that the littoral states are already executing. And the last thing I want to say is coordination. But that coordination should go well beyond the traditional partners that are now part of the hub. Turkey is a crucial partner there, not just because it sits on the Montreux Convention, but also because Turkey has been able to establish a huge diplomatic network in the region, including a nation like Russia. So in that coordination effort, I think we should shift from a need to share, from a need to know to a need to share attitude. And in that, we can tie all things together. So very brief, very short, certainly from someone who sits comfortably on the North Sea in his armchair, but I hope this is useful for the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Definitely very useful. And you mentioned Turkey's strategic positioning. So we have an excellent speaker to shed some more lights on this. So, Ambassador, maybe you can extend on the role of Turkey and how strategically important it is, and also what role it has in addressing the challenges, including regional coordination, intelligence sharing, demining, deterrence, monitoring of potential ceasefire, and so on. Thank you.
Thank you. We always considered what had happened in 2022 with the full-scale invasion of Ukraine as a starting point. But we should go back to 2014 with the illegitimate annexation of Crimea, and even before that, 2008 Georgia war. What we have seen is that in past assessments, and I can understand for the Admiral to keep maritime domain very close to his heart, but he was very smart not to focus only on maritime domain, but to have a holistic approach. And I think it would be extremely important to have a multi-domain approach, since we are talking about a region, not only with maritime, but also other components. And also we have to be cognizant of the fact that It is a region with a number of protracted conflicts, and Russia is masters in exploiting, abusing, and misusing these existing protracted, unresolved conflicts. Now, we should also be aware of the fact that in 2014, after the annexation of Crimea, with the militarization of the peninsula by Russia, in fact, Russia was able to project power to the south that made it possible for Russia to encircle NATO in a way from the east and the south. So there was some sort of an interconnected nature in terms of the theater we are talking about. Therefore, it requires NATO to have a 360-degree approach, not only focusing on threats emanating from the east, which is very important and relevant, but also to be aware of what's happening in the south. So this interconnected nature is extremely important. We should also be aware of the A2AD capabilities that Russia had put in place in Crimea. And sometimes when we were focusing too much on the maritime domain by the ideas of creating a Black Sea flotilla, we were neglecting that it would be falling into the crosshairs of Russian A2AD. So we have to be comprehensive, holistic, as you said, in our approaches. Now, Turkey's contributions, Montreux Convention was referred to. Indeed, Turkey has been constantly taking pride of being a custodian of the Montreux Convention. On the 5th day of the launch of what Russians called it special military operation in Ukraine, Turkey was blunt enough to qualify it as a war and invoked relevant provisions of the Montreux Convention. And I can assure you at the time, Russia was placing demands to the Turkish side with specific requests for the passage of maritime assets, warships, back to the Black Sea, which Turkey denied. Sometimes there may be shallow slogan type of assessments in different quarters of our continent. Even when Turkey was engaging with Russia for different reasons, because they were in the conflict areas that Turkey's military presence was there, we needed to have a conversation with Russia for deconflicting purposes. And even this engagement was misconstrued as if Turkey was shifting axis, even thinking of leaving NATO. I think we should be more engaged with each other. That's why we welcome what EU has done by developing a strategic approach to the Black Sea region. But it requires, at the same time, to be open-minded, to reach out to those in the region. Littoral states like Turkey, which is not a member state of the European Union, but one cannot just assume that since the accession talks with Turkey has been stalled, we should forget about this country. No matter Turkey has such an engagement in the accession talks or not, it will remain, hopefully for centuries to come, in the region. And it requires a smart, productive, constructive engagement with Turkey on the basis of mutual interest. I welcome the fact that Turkey is now being considered as an entity to be engaged with. otherwise, whatever strategy EU will put in place will not be relevant and realistic, neglecting the contributions of a key player in the region. This brings me to the importance of regional ownership. There has been important developments already taking place. The trilateral cooperation among Bulgaria, Romania, and Turkey. They have come up with mine countermeasure initiative, which was put in place last year on the margins of the Hague NATO summit meeting. And since then, over 200 mines were detected, and it has proven to be useful. There are a number of areas we can think of that relates to the hybrid threats that we are exposed to, like protection of critical infrastructure, undersea cables. And I think this trilateral cooperation could be replicated not only in counter mine initiative, but in different areas. And I think we should give some space for these three literal NATO allied nations to progress, and definitely inclusion of partners like Ukraine would be essential in the long run for them to make their unique contribution. Turkey attaches utmost importance to its relations with its strategic partner Ukraine. Turkey, in fact, has strong cooperative schemes which are in place in defense industry and in different areas to strengthen the military capacity of Ukraine. And at the same time, we are also learning from our Ukrainian friends in our endeavors. So regional ownership would be first and foremost area that we should focus on. One last thing I would have to emphasize is connectivity. Connectivity is a strategic asset for the regional security, and we should be open-minded, be complementarity rather than competitive in putting certain projects in the forefront. Take, for instance, the Three Seas initiative of the European Union, which is extremely useful, but it doesn't mean that other projects could not complement it. The Trans-Caspian transport route, which is also known as Middle Corridor, is equally important, and they can complement each other. And we should invest more on that. And one last thing in that respect, what we have seen from the takeaways of Davos World Economic Forum meeting and Munich Security Conference is that the line in between geoeconomics and geopolitics has already blurred. And I'm sure that the private and public sector interaction would be more, especially at a time when we have elevated our ambition with 5% GDP within the NATO context for defense spending. Private enterprises would be in the picture from now on, especially in boosting our resilience. It is key with all the electric grids, hubs, logistics centers, ports, undersea cables, and critical infrastructure, and for their protection. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. Just a quick follow-up, because you mentioned about the connectivity and its importance. How could this be a strategic enabler for deterrence, and how can we engage the private sector as well to contribute to these efforts?
Well, I think in creating a secure and stable environment, such connectivity projects meets the purpose. And private sector will have a heightened interest to invest in such large-scale multinational projects. And it can pave the way for other stakeholders who are rather not with the potential to contribute. I'm referring to Russia, for instance. Right now, it is not possible for us to go back to business as usual. And regional ownership in that sense has transformed, not to include Russia. But I'm sure that we would have a long-term vision how to make sure that one day Russia would leave its proven pattern of aggressive behavior and to be a responsible part of geopolitics. It is perhaps a long-term optimistic vision, but we cannot write off Russia from the outset, even for long-term perspectives that we may have in mind. And connectivity in that respect can be an added confidence-building measure in that respect.
Thank you. I think you're thinking very long term, so that's something to applaud indeed. But
this is diplomatic.
Yeah, I don't think the current strategy that EU has is addressing that century yet.
My words should not be misconstrued, because Russia is a threat we all agree upon, and we cannot go back to business as usual as long as they don't prove us that they are changing their pattern of aggressive behavior.
Thank you. As long as they prove their aggressive behavior, I'm going to turn to our representative and speaker from Ukraine, and maybe you can extend, Hennadiy, about Ukraine's priorities and strategy in the Black Sea, and how it can also be the enabler of the security and contributor of the security in the region.
Iana, thank you so much. It's really my pleasure to be part of this discussion, quite robust and very enriching. So I will try not to replicate already the points made by my colleagues, but try to put some other arguments to our discussion. Let me start from the European Union approach. That means that we tackled upon NATO possibilities and capabilities in the region, but still about the approach per se. Ambassador mentioned correctly that the point of reference is not 2022. It's even not 2014, it's 2008. So I would say that in this regard, no response or feeble response from European Union was a clear appetizer for Russia to go ahead. And that's what we had in 2022. So I think when it comes to EU approach, the first message from Ukrainian side, it should be long-term. And if it started with Crimea for Russia, it must end with Crimea for Russia. Understanding the complexity of this issue for all of us, on diplomatic level, on military level, we have to understand that occupation of Crimea is a constant threat, and we have to address it long-term in our strategy, joint strategy of European Union and partners, Ukraine as well. Next point, when it comes to approach, I would say that it should be interconnected with other policies. It also practiced here in European Union. I'm not a diplomat, so sometimes I will try to put it differently. We have so many paperwork done on strategies, which are just paper. And I think this should be different in this time frame, because I think the matter of urgency is different, and we understand the complexity is different, and dynamics in the region is very, very different. So I think here we should go with approach. If there is strategy, there should be action plan. And action plan should be shared by partners who see the threat through the same lenses. and it will amplify our possibilities and capabilities to act. And I think that here we shouldn't wait for next multi-year financial framework. I think we should act now and to preserve some finances through different baskets and different resources and challenges, and this stage as well. As Ukraine has experience, if it's not possible in short term to do on the level of European Union, we tried to address it via coalitions. Coalitions of the willing, capability coalitions. So if anything, we understand that there is something to do at the moment, maybe we should create coalitions and try to do it in sub-regional level to just push this issue ahead on the agenda. Next point, which is very important about approach, it should be also in right framework with partnerships. As I mentioned, Turkey is very important, and I would say even one of the crucial partners in creating peace and security environment in the region of Black Sea. So I think further we go, the initiatives we create and craft should be crafted jointly, and we should match our capabilities, should match our technology level of development, and also our political will to act. Only in this way, I think it's possible for us to create something which is meaningful and tangible in results. But for Ukrainian vision and where we see ourselves, as I said, the first point is long-term perspective. In Ukraine, we have several phases because we are in full-fledged war. So the first level of cooperation, how we could decrease the level of hostilities in Ukraine and Black Sea at this moment. And I think this is very important for us to understand that this security environment influences or impacts directly connectivity and other trade issues in the region. So to give you some figures to reflect on, only in 2025, Russia destroyed around 400 facilities or objects of port infrastructure in Ukraine. 400. It destroyed or damaged 120 vessels, civilian vessels and support vessels, and it also killed 136 people in this ports area. So the threat is imminent at the moment. Not talking about the missiles which are launched via Black Sea to hit Ukrainian cities in times of this frost we have in Ukraine, and basically all. Yeah, it's a big catastrophe for Ukraine at the moment. So I would say that here we should try to see how we could decrease it with our joint efforts, with European Union possibilities, with Turkey possibilities. And I think here we also welcome the initiative which is chaired by President Erdogan, that Turkey might play as a lead for guaranteeing freedom of navigation in Black Sea. This is, I think, very important notion, and I think this is yet the invitation for greater cooperation with the European Union, because I think when we match our capabilities and possibilities to do that, this is something which proves to be very efficient. Next point, secure and stable ceasefire and sustainable peace in the future. For this, monitoring and verification is a must. So what we need at the moment, like on this phase, try to understand what is needed from both partners, from the European Union and Turkey, what capabilities would be there on the military side, on civilian side, to just pool and find the adequate framework for verification and monitoring of the ceasefire if it is in place on maritime domain. We should be prepared, and it is my argument that it would be entry ticket for participation in negotiations on peace in Ukraine on the same level as United States, because I think at the moment we see that there is asymmetrical approach which doesn't cater well for the European continent and for our region. Next point, which is the third level, I think I would say reconstruction and recovery of the port infrastructure, which also brings me to the question of connectivity. If we are on this stage, Ukraine is very interested in restoring critical infrastructure of our port system, but at the same time to create or use a new approach which is build back better, to create modern facilities which allow to untap potential of European Union and Ukraine as food security guarantors for the world, and to use Black Sea as a route for this transportation of much more needed grain and other products. And I would say here cooperation with Turkey is also our asset. I would say that when the negotiated also by UN and EU and Turkey grain initiative was torpedoed by Russia, Ukraine tried other initiatives and it proved very efficient. One of them was grain from Ukraine. And basically, due to our cooperation with our European and Turkish partners, it developed in not only for grain for Ukraine, but food from Ukraine, which also is a bigger part of our endeavor to just, even in times of food, to be guarantors of food security worldwide. And last point from my side, post-war arrangement for Black Sea. Here, as I mentioned, and I just copy words of my colleagues, we should decrease to the highest possible level, decrease the influence of Russia in the region. Try to create the system of defense and deterrence, which helps us, European nations, allies and member states, to create such a system when Russia is not allowed to do anything harmful for the region. Because I do agree with Ambassador that we should look for better Russia, but I think it would be shaped only by our efforts of our deterrence and our defense. With this, I stop here, but I would reiterate that I think the first step of creating this EU approach is welcomed by Ukraine, and we are ready to be involved and engage as many initiatives within this approach as possible.
Thank you so much, Hennadiy. You answered some of the questions that I had already in your intervention. So I'm also aware of the time we have left for this session. So I would like to turn to the audience for the question, and that also includes our online audience. So if you have some questions, we will collect.
Hello, thanks everybody. The name is Mark, currently a trainee at DG Inest, and actually in the unit that came up with this strategy. And I wanted to ask, first of all, I guess you referenced some of it, but what are the biggest hurdles that still remain to the successful implementation? Is it mostly with the EU or perhaps even with the partners? And secondly, do you see some additional avenues, venues, which this strategy could further tap into? Because again, you know, the security hub is a great invention, but because we came up with something great, we shouldn't perhaps stop. So is there more things possibly we could do? Thank you.
Thank you. We'll collect some more questions. So please identify yourself and organization.
My name is Ayşe Yürekli. I'm a new representative of Turkish Women Entrepreneurs Association. And my question is actually to Ambassador İldem. First of all, welcome. And you were mentioning about the blurring line between geoeconomics and geopolitics, also based on Davos discussions and Munich Security Conference. And I wanted to also ask you about the recent visit of Marta Kos to Turkey, to Ankara earlier this month on the 6th of February, where also the connectivity issues very much in the forefront in terms of regional cooperation. And I would love to hear your ideas on that, especially also considering the fact that the Munich Security Conference, Mrs. von der Leyen afterwards actually has not mentioned Turkey among the potential partners, strategic partners. How do you view these aspects? Thank you so much.
I think there was one more question here.
My name is Alkım Özkalanç. I'm an intern at the Turkish Industry and Business Association. And my question is basically about the possible use of ethnic conflicts around Black Sea by Russia. So as you know, currently Russia is actively making use of ethnic conflicts, be it in Transnistria, be it in Georgia, be it in Crimea. So I would like to ask what should be the main, let's say, plan of action that the EU should take with respect to the possible use or instrumentalization of ethnic conflicts in its new Black Sea strategy?
Thank you. Let's start with answering these questions. And there was the first question about the implementation of the strategy and also the action steps going forward. So maybe Julia and Ben, you want to address that question, and then we'll move forward with the Turkey question.
Okay, very quickly. First, of course, it's funding. For implementation of the EU strategic approach, and especially quickly, a lot of funding is needed. And the initiative is now very much positioned with the regional, so EU members, Romania and Bulgaria, to set up this EU security hub, maritime security hub. And it is also a challenge. There have been a very good progress, but the coordination among the national actors within Romania, within Bulgaria, to come to a clear vision of how this hub should function, as well as a division of tasks between Romanian and Bulgarian, coordination of this, agreements also with other member states or other partners. This is something that takes time. But it is progressing. The challenge remains funding. Interesting elements on how to bring this the strategic approach into action is exchange of practices, best practices with other EU member states. And in that regard, the system that is now functioning around the North Sea and Baltic Sea on coordination and protection of the undersea critical infrastructure is really something that can be used, not 100%, because the North Sea and Baltic Sea, they're all a very shallow sea, so they're the specifics of what would the priority, right, and then a maritime situational picture and what is on the ground is quite visible there, and it helps to detect and prevent hybrid attacks. Black Sea is a really deep sea, so it's also impossible to have the same level and depth of situational awareness, but at least starting with the exchange of information would be helpful. Another challenge I wanted to point out is that Black Sea, compared to Baltic and North, is fragmented in terms of alliances, in terms of so there's EU members, there's EU candidates, NATO members. There's also countries with very different alliances, and that also makes the needed trust and coordination, of course, and something that needs to be developed. So I'll stop here, I guess. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. Please.
Very quickly, I would almost say that when your question is what can we do now to increase our effectiveness in the Black Sea, I would say no more papers. Let the operators do their work and provide them with a mandate they can work on. And if there are conflicts with the mandate, then be open and quickly respond, because I think we live in a very fluid time. And if we think we can take, even if it's 6 weeks, which is an extremely short time to produce a paper, even 6 weeks, the world is, and I think Ukraine will vouch for that, in 6 weeks' time, the world is completely different again. So allow the operators to go to work, make sure they're curious, they're inventive, and they come up, and that there's a good sort of connection between policymakers and the operators, with the idea that the policymakers should turn around immediately to facilitate a mandate that the operators can work by. So that will be my answer to that. It sounds like a very simple answer from an operator, but I think that's very crucial. We have to get started. And if money is a limitation, that don't let it stop people from doing stuff. And your question, very quickly, if I may, about ethnicity. I must say that, and that's what I meant, resilience means everything about prevention, about absorption, and about reconstitution. And I think if we improve, for instance, if we have a strategic dependence, and we improve it, for one thing, up till we arrive to a level that we are very sound, we'll remain vulnerable. And if ethnicity is an issue in the politics of the nations, even if it's the literal states there, you can make sure your adversary will make use of it. So it's one of these many aspects that should go into how can we improve our resilience. Also, this aspect is crucial, and then particularly in the Arctic arena, ethnicity and the indigenous people have always played a very crucial role in everything they've done. So there is experience in how to deal with that.
Thank you. Please, about the two key questions.
Well, the question was regarding the blurring of line between geoeconomics and geopolitics. I briefly alluded to it in my introductory remarks. In old times, what we used to see was a clear distinction between the way topics were discussed in Davos and Munich. But this year, many things were overlapping with each other. So when we talk about security, it is no longer related to borders or armies or capabilities, but rather electric grids, logistic hubs, undersea cables, critical infrastructure. All were part of the conversation, both in Davos and in Munich. And the key message is, as you rightly mentioned, how to boost our resilience. I'm invited to attend a meeting of business community in London next week, and the topic is exactly this: how business communities can make a contribution for strengthening of resilience. And especially at a time when we have ambitious targets to strengthen defense spending in numeric figures, but also it is not only to spend more money, but to have a meaningful contribution to resilience, absorbing shocks and reconstituting. And for that, it is my hope that in future, private and public partnerships will grow. And private contribution will also necessitate an agency and governance to have a more say in how to shape the geopolitical landscape in that respect. A few words on the protracted conflicts. Definitely investing on resilience is one important area that we can talk about. Another one would be engaging with those countries in a smart way, and also to find ways to resolve the protracted conflicts. I served at the OSCE together with my fellow colleague, ambassador of the EU at that time, Terry Bechet. And my complaint at that time was that OSCE was not doing its job, not focusing on resolution of the conflicts, but rather containment of crisis. So we have to change our mindset. We should invest more on how to resolve these conflicts. I was stunned with the rhetoric that I was listening from the Russian representative in the co-chairs of Minsk process to resolve Nagorno-Karabakh issue. I mean, first, those who were instrumental in creating the conflict were the ones who are deciding how to bring an end to the conflict. And I think we should be open-minded and reflective of the ways we can stop crisis and bring an end to conflicts. First and foremost, the ongoing war in Ukraine. We have to salute the bravery and heroic attitude of our Ukrainian friends to stand up for this blatant aggression. And second, although the international rules-based orders that we always refer to had collapsed, and it's a reality of both Davos and Munich Security Conference, so we cannot perhaps restore it, but we will need to reconstruct it. While reconstructing it, we should at least not give up certain principles that have underpinned our security. Respect to territorial integrity, sovereignty, and independence of nations. Thank you.
Thank you. Ambassador Hennadiy, would you like to add a few words?
Yes, to the question of the biggest hurdles and additional venues, I think is very important. And from Ukrainian perspective, we won't be more creative to say that we should, European partners, to switch from peacetime mode of thinking and decision-making to wartime. Because when you have 27 to decide on some idea, it takes years. When you have Russia, it takes some months to produce new equipment, new devices, and new strategies which are also implemented. So I think here we have to be more concise in our time and try to understand what are the complexities of this situation. Additional venues, I would say we shouldn't wait for new instruments to come, but with the SAFE program, for example, we had communications with our partners in Romania and in Bulgaria. We're trying to create already some schemes for financing some instruments which would be present also in Black Sea. So I think this is a valuable way out of the situation. But in the end of the day, I think here we have looked for this triangle, NATO, EU, and Ukraine. Then it will be much more sufficient.
Thank you so much. Unfortunately, we are running out of time soon, so we don't have time for further questions. But before we close this session, I would like to turn back to our speakers and maybe just in a few sentences, you can tell us what should be the number one priority that you would suggest to EU and NATO to focus on regarding the Black Sea area and security. So, Julia, we'll start with you.
Thank you for this question. Yes, there's Black Sea region is an extremely interesting region, and there's different priorities. But I would say number one for now is to support military support to Ukraine, because Ukraine is actively resisting the number one threat in the region. So the sustained military aerial support is very important. And the second, I would say, coordination in the region, and including indeed Ukraine, Turkey, and other actors to bring a comprehensive long-term solution to this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can only support Julia's words. The war in Ukraine must stop. We must do everything in our power to achieve that. But that is not just financial support, but it's also, and we come back to that word, it's also improving the overall resilience in the whole region. That will also make things, bring some sort of peace closer.
Thank you. Pastor.
Well, I agree that to bring an end to the ongoing war in Ukraine is a priority, but it should not be based on sort of power politics game. It should be aiming a sustainable peace rather than short-term ceasefire. And second, for the Black Sea, I highlighted regional ownership, the importance of it. We should be aware of that. And for EU and others to adopt a more inclusive approach. And since coordination was referred to, I can only subscribe to what has been said.
Thank you. Nothing.
Yes, using the Admiral's terminology, if you are sitting in peaceful places in our armchairs, it doesn't mean that you are not in war. And this notion should be with our decision making. We should prepare decisions which are relevant to the time we are in.
Thank you so much to you, our speakers. It has been a very interesting discussion, and 1 hour hasn't been a fair time to unlock all of the issues that is on the table regarding the Black Sea security. We will definitely continue working on this topic and on these issues, and we didn't get enough time to touch upon all the aspects of it today, so definitely our work will continue on this. Just a couple of interesting events that are coming up at EPC in a few days. So I would invite you to check our website. We have Unpacking Turkish Foreign Policy, what to expect in 2026 Turkey-US relations. We're also hosting EPC Thought Leadership Forum with General Sean Clancy, chair of the EU Military Committee, next week. And we also are marking 4 years of Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine and reinforcing European support for Ukraine's victory next week. So stay tuned, and thank you again for joining here in person and also online, and I wish you a nice day. Thank you.